Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents, the H3O Art of Life show. The title of this show is From Civil Rights to Human Rights, and I have with me some very able guests to discuss this subject matter. Marielle Johnson, and I think Curtis Henderson, although I haven't seen Curtis in a while, so I have to get reacquainted, and attorney Lawrence E. Kennon. And I want to start with Curtis because I want Curtis to tell me what he's been up to because I haven't seen you in a good while.
Okay. Well, basically, I met you when I was incarcerated, wrongfully convicted, doing an 80-year prison sentence, and I was paroled in '98. And since being home, I've had jobs on and off, primarily working on cars. I have a degree in mechanics, a degree of which I got while incarcerated. I've basically been active in the community with brothers and sisters interested in dealing with the situation that's confronting us concerning the violence. And I'm with a group called the Street Peace Coalition. We mediate, we mentor, we intervene where and whenever we can. We've basically been in existence about 9 months, so I've been involved with that. Other than that, working on cars.
It seems like a risky business, street peace.
Yeah,
you know, because that means that you have to wade in where the action is.
Yes.
And you have to be exposed. They have to know who you are.
Yes.
And they have to respect you.
Yes. So what our chairman, who Mr. Michael Muhammad, brother of the Nation of Islam, is one of the board members. He's the chairman. You know, he always advises us of those things in terms of dealing with issues in the community, because what he did was he went and him and a few other brothers went and got people who were influential in various communities with various so-called street organizations. And we tried to bring those brothers together to be a force to go out and confront the younger brothers and try to give them a different direction. And as you said, it's a risky business. However, we don't do it, who else is going to do it? You know, we're fighting to save our sons. We're fighting to save our people. I mean, we are considered, some of us, former gangbangers or former gang leaders, you know, but we consider ourselves conscious black men concerned about our community and doing whatever we can do with the means that we have available to confront those issues, and be it putting our body out there where we was doing it when we was out there gang banging. So what's the difference in going out there doing it now?
It's wonderful to know that there is such a group, and I hope that there are more. I hope that you're not the single Street Peace Coalition
no, we're not.
in the city.
We're trying, at this moment, we're trying to coalesce with other organizations. They just had a march Saturday. Unfortunately, I didn't go. I was at the VON Fest, and they had a march, but we tend to continue those marches on the south and west sides. In the marches, we want it to consist of primarily, like I said, brothers who once had influences in those particular areas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want us to go back and, you know, and if we have opportunity to talk on the corners or on the street, we want to be able to do that. You know, to give the younger brothers a real, true definition of what they're involved with, you know, and you know, if we get one or two brothers to listen, we're all good with that, you know, but we dedicated to that.
At the end of the show that preceded this one, I was talking about advocacy. I was talking about we know what the needs, we know what many of the needs are in our community, and it is our charge to decide on where we should be doing some work. But there's plenty of work to do, and there's plenty of expertise of different kinds that people can bring to bear. Yes. You know, they can, some people like Attorney Lawrence Kennon, who stays abreast of legal matters and offers advice and support in those arenas, because that's been his life's work. And he has always been an advocate, and I suppose that's just part of your DNA, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about some of the recent things that have come to your attention and gained your interest.
Primarily, well, before I get right to that, I want to mention another group who are trying to help young people, which is Philip Jackson and the Black Star Program.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a kind of a overall situation. Usually he's working with those who have not descended so far away from the moral approach to life, so that he's got those who are already kind of in the consciousness of the advantage of education, but he has to develop them further. I do know some of the brothers who are out there have gotten into the anti-intellectual mode, so they are against people, in fact, who really are trying to learn. And I know that you run into that. So the things that I see now are primarily the brothers who are ex-felons that you run into, and there are people who are working in that group. Then there are the groups who, as I say, like with Phil, and we keep running into individual situations, and my primary interest is really police brutality, the way that they are treated. The brothers who are out in the street, and this stop and frisk law, which is so horrible, and you have people who are saying it's all right because it's developing an interest to prevent crime, but out of 90% of the people who are stopped on the street, there's no charges because they're just stopping brothers in the street. And I want to get to another part of this. They say that the community is not cooperating with the police. The police are not cooperating with the community. So cooperation means it's a two-way street. And the police have this view that it's us against the community. So as long as you're trying to be friendly to a cop and he's frowning at you and refusing to speak. 4 days ago, I was at my gas station, and there were about 4 or 5 police cars, one unmarked and the others were marked there in the area there. And so I walked in, and I know the manager there, you know, but I saw 2 policemen inside the place. The rest were outside talking to each other. So I asked the 2 who were in there, what's going on? He said, oh, no, he said, I'll tell you, you're not involved, so that's all you need to know. I'm sure that makes you happy. I said, no, it doesn't make me happy. I want to know why you're here and what's going on. He says, well, you're not involved. I said, it's my community. I live here. I want to know what's going on. So by then, there were a lot of people there. People, you know, began to get up. And he just looked at me, and I said, I have a right to know if there's a problem in my community. And he looked at the other guy, and they just laughed and walked on out. So I said, well, you're not cooperating with us. We have a right to know. And you're saying that we're not cooperating with you? That's just a very, very light aspect of it. But you hear on the radio and everything else, why aren't the people letting the police know? And I have walked up to situations many times now where there's things going on in the community and the police will not give you any information, yet they want you to give them information. And the best way to handle that, they keep saying we need to talk and get to be friendly with them, while they come along with the stern faces they drive by, and if you speak to them or you look at them wrong, they're liable to get out the car and hold you up against the car. And I know of instances like that.
Mariel, I'm going to get to you real quick. But one of the things that I think about when you talk about cooperating with the police, you know, experience is a great teacher.
Yes.
We have learned in our community that very often calling upon the police to assist us in resolving an issue or conflict escalates the problem, makes it worse,
Yes.
and there's usually a casualty among us at the end of that.
Yes.
Just recently, in the village of Park Forest, a 95-year-old man in an assisted living nursing home was tasered and shot with beanbags by the police because they couldn't control him. Now, tell me, if the nursing home staff called the police because they had a belligerent 95-year-old, could we have expected law enforcement to have contained that situation without violence? Could we have expected that you could just cordon off the area so that the person who was confused and acting out could be contained until he wore himself out? He's 95. So he's not likely to be able to stage a 2 or 3 day standoff. But the point is, that was like the other end of the Trayvon Martin.
Exactly.
You know? So the community has learned that involving the police in the affairs of the community often creates greater problems that you had, or creates a problem that you didn't have, you know, but does not always end with the kind of resolution that you would want. So you have a problem with getting some kind of cooperation. And then, of course, you said yourself that, you know, we are the raw materials for the prisons. In other words, it is in the interest, apparently, of law enforcement to have people that they can arrest and incarcerate so that the prison industrial complex can function.
Exactly.
So how are you going to cooperate with somebody that you know is out to get you? You know, here's somebody who is out to rob you of your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that you're supposed to have, according to the Constitution.
I'm a prime example of that.
So what are we supposed to do with that? We don't know what to do with that.
We're between a rock and a hard place, as the saying goes.
And we know it.
Yes.
And so you used an unfortunate term when you said descended, because sometimes when you see people drop out or withdraw from something, it's because their needs are not being met in that situation. And they don't descend, they just book, you know, they just depart. They just leave a situation that is futile and that is fruitless. But
that's hopelessness, and we can't afford hopelessness.
Well, we have hope has to have a basis. There has to be reason to hope. And if you see if what you see all among you, all around you, are examples of people who, in Curtis's case, get shuffled off to prison unjustly, then Trayvon Martin is walking to and from the store in his neighborhood. You know, if you can get taken down for no reason except that people can exercise that kind of control over your freedom and your life and your pursuit of happiness, then there's not a lot of things that you can hope for, except my hope is that you don't go out like that. You know, even though you look at a situation that is virtually a hopeless situation in many cases, that you just decide that ain't how you going out. You know, as in his case, you know, he's going to keep working for the Street Peace Coalition, because he ain't going out like that. He's not going to be counted out, and he's not going to see any others that he can reach go
And
out.
that's what we
Mariel,
need.
we talk too long and don't let you talk. Come on.
Oh, that's quite all right. I'm very comfortable listening because I invited Diablo, Noon,
Dialobe.
Curtis, Henderson.
Dialobe.
I brought him
Okay.
with me intentionally because I wanted him to have a platform, and I think as an elder, that's what needs to happen. The young people need to tell their story, and he has been talking about it over the radio for years. When I met him, he was in Dixon, the same way you met him when he was in Dixon.
Right.
And I came out and started talking about his case on the radio. And he told me at that time that he was innocent and he had been arrested when he was 15. And my trips to the penitentiaries was all healing and enlightening because my son is incarcerated, wrongfully convicted. And I have been trying for years to encourage people who have the ability to help us. You know, it's one thing to say, well, they must have did something.
Exactly.
But when you know people haven't did anything and I think I try to raise the conscience of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want young people to respect you,
Mm-hmm.
but when you get in a respectful position, you forget about them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you say, well, it's over. I even went back to school. I'm in a paralegal class now.
Very good.
And I'm in there because I want to encourage people like Diablo and the other young people. We're going to have to get in there and save our own people.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get them before they get in debt and get nice cars and start worrying about losing their home. I want their conscience to be directly connected to saving our people. I don't want sellouts because I think it's really an insult to the intelligence of police to think that they're so ignorant they don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You say there's some good cops. Yes, they are. But there's some good cops that do just like the good doctors and the good lawyers and the good teachers. They tend to their own business. You know, it's not their business. And well, I did the best I could. We can't rest. We cannot rest as long as injustice is brewing in our neighborhoods. Our young people don't respect us. Why? Because we can't protect them. And if anybody would tell me that the police are so ignorant till they don't know what's going on, that's a disgrace. You know what's going on. The youngsters can tell you where to get drugs.
Mm-hmm.
The youngsters can tell you where you can get a gun just like that. And you mean to say the police walking around don't know anything?
They selling drugs
Yeah.
on the cameras.
Not only that, the police are pimping our youngsters. And people need to come out and tell the truth. I'm too old to be phony. You know, I don't know how many more days I got on this earth, but I intend to spend as many as possible fighting for what's right. I might not be able to help my son. I'm going to die trying. But if I can help someone else's along the way, that would be some consolation for me. Years ago, I filed a complaint against John Burge. And because of that, my family was targeted. I've been under the hammer ever since. Won't nobody even discuss my son's case with me because they know if they take this on, they're going to have to stand up against the system. This is not no plaything. I got it in black and white. I got the memo from the police station that they wrote up on me. A memo involving me in a murder to get my son's confession. I got all that. I got the complaint that was reopened when I filed against Burge. But I cannot get anyone, because I ran out of money, who will stand up and help me fight this case. Diablo, he has, I'm not pronouncing it. Well, I'll get it right one day.
Well, just call him Curtis until you get his right name right.
That's right. He has papers to back up and substantiate what he says about his case. but you can't get anyone to take it. So what's the purpose of having these people that we respect? We talk to them, we meet with them, but they won't fight with us. See, because that's the sad part. And I want to say with the case that I watched it on television and people were saying how surprised they was at the verdict. I wasn't surprised because I go to court all the time. This is the way the system works. It works like that. And this professional, he got on there with all his degrees and gonna talk about how the bullet went because he was leaning over the body. Well, I say, why didn't somebody say the bullet could have been from his body because he had that can of pop in his pocket? That could hold his shirt out. That could have made it. Nobody, all them people with their degrees, nobody brought that out. That don't make sense. Little common sense things, and they're getting paid all that money, and they just, it's just like it's all over
Well,
now.
Mario, you act as though they were seeking a conviction.
No, they weren't. They was
Well,
just
if
going
you're
through the
seeking a
motion.
conviction, then you get picayune and you start looking at little details and little obvious kinds of things.
Yeah.
But if it's open and shut, you know, if what you're doing is you're having a trial because the parents are asking for a trial. They think that having a trial has something to do with a just outcome. And so they just didn't want him to get away scot-free, you know, and nobody even take him to trial about it.
Right, I understand that.
So they gave them what they asked for. They gave a trial.
Well, that's what I
And
asked for too.
we all watched it, and we all knew from one day to the next day, we all could see that it was going nowhere. And that's why you didn't see as much of an outrage at the conclusion, because people had your same outlook, that they didn't expect him to be convicted.
But there is an outrage. There's all
No,
over the
I'm
country.
talking about, I'm just not saying there was no outrage. I'm saying the kind of really huge
Okay.
outrage that could have happened if
Yeah.
people had expected a different outcome.
Yeah, because
You know,
my expectation,
But
I didn't
many
expect a
people,
different one.
many people that you talked to said, you know, they didn't expect anything different.
No, they
and
went through the
so-
motions. They tried to pacify us.
Right.
You know, in my son's case, I got the letters in here the lawyer wrote to him. They offered him first 15 years. Then they offered him 10 years. Then they offered him 6 years. The day we went for court, they asked him, what will you take? And my son said, I won't take 15 minutes for something I didn't do anymore, because that plea bargaining just ruins your life. So we went to court before a jury of his peers who were all white, and they gave him life when he could have had 2 years.
Yeah, but he could have had 2 years that he would have been unhappy with himself.
Yeah, well, he's still
He's
unhappy
unhappy.
being in the
No,
penitentiary for life.
what I mean is your integrity means something.
Yeah,
you
well,
know.
he said he had
I
a
had
choice.
the same office, you know, when I was kidnapped. When I say I don't say arrested, I say I was kidnapped at gunpoint because I was taken off the street with 5 or 6 white detectives pointing a gun at me, told me to come get in the car, and I was coming out my brother's house, and I was taken to a police station, held there for all night, then told I was put in two lineups, told I was identified as being involved in a murder, or attempt robbery. But for me, it was like okay, they separated everybody, you know, and then they come back saying that if you don't say this guy did it, we're gonna give you the case. I told them I don't know who did it. So I was eventually framed and railroaded with murder. Sent to the county jail. Judge Strayhorn was my judge. I had assigned a public defender. I mean, I want to get to that part, but common sense. If you live in a neighborhood, who's going to go 3 stores down to a store that you live in the neighborhood, and rob somebody in the store?
When they know you.
Yeah. My public defender, I was in the store when a shooting happened outside the store. I wasn't out there. I was in the store buying Jay's potato chips and a strawberry pop. Mm-hmm. If I came out the store and I said, I seen this man on the ground holding his stomach, okay, I come out the store when I heard the shot. Me and my nephew, I looked out the door, looked on the ground, the man was there, and then the lady looked up and she started screaming, okay? They convinced her to say that I was patting her husband down, and I was with this guy that shot her husband. So I ended up, okay, well, like I said, now I want to get to the part about the Strayhorn. Was my judge. I had a public defender who stayed in tour with the Strayhorn, you know, about trying to insult Strayhorn, I guess, in his courtroom. So they waited till Strayhorn went on a 2-week vacation and decided to take me to another court, a judge who was a retired Republican conservative state senator who never tried a criminal case a day in his life. He was a civic judge. They took me down to the Daly Center, and I was convicted and given 80 years in prison, okay? Sent to a alleged so-called juvenile prison, which Sheridan had been notorious for torturing juvenile. I believe Lou Palmer had something to do with them closing it down as a juvenile facility. But I was sent there anyway because it was no longer a juvenile facility, but they had 30 of us still there, okay? They brought adults from other prisons because they had turned it into an adult facility. So I was there with the adults now, me and the other 30 juveniles. They transferred 10 out, and then they tried to transfer the other 10 of us. They transferred 20. They tried to transfer the other 10 of us. Then no other juvenile facility in the state of Illinois want us. So I was called in the office one day, told to see the psychologist. And I've been in Sheridan for over a year with adults. But I was called into office, told by the psychologist, I said, you've been convicted of murder. I'm going to prescribe you some medication. And if you don't take the medication, it will be given to you by force. I said, well, that's the only way I'm going to take it because I'm not taking no 10 milligrams of Thorazine. He said, based on my conviction of being convicted of murder. He wrote this down in black and white, okay? So I refused to take it. For one time, it was injected in my body. They didn't give me no disciplinary report, none of that. I wrestled with them and so forth. 5 big old hillbilly, as Trayvon called them, crazy crackers. That's what they were. Creepy crackers, okay. They wrestled me down. I was injected with Thorazine. They let me go, so I went to my cell because I was feeling dazed, right? But for 11 days, they wrote me disciplinary reports. They didn't try to force it on me for 11 days. They wrote me disciplinary reports saying that I refused to take my medication, all right? So then they took me to another building, which no one was in the building. It was an isolated building, held me there for about a couple of months and brought me a petition saying I was being transferred to the adult division of the Illinois Department of Corrections, all right? And I was charged with being incorrigible, refusing orders, and fighting with my peers, and so forth and so on. And I was taken back downtown, not before Strayhorn, but this was a couple of years after I was convicted before this judge. Taken back downtown to the Daly Center under this false petition, which I never had any opportunity to defend myself against. And the judge ordered me transferred over from Sheridan, which was already an adult facility, to another, from juvenile to adult institution. So,
how old were you then?
I was 16 at the time. So I was sent from there to Joliet as an adult. But I was, mind you, I was in Sheridan all the time, which was an adult prison, okay? So as a result of that, I went through Joliet to Stateville to Pontiac. I was transferred 78 times, put on a torture program called a circuit, which I explained to you a while back, but it consisted of being transferred throughout the state at any time of the day or night, deprive you of sleep. We were subjected to lots of sleep deprivation because they would transfer you to one prison. You would be riding 4 or 5 hours chained in a car, and then they'd get you there. You'd be there for an hour. They transferred you another 200-300 miles to another prison. But I was transferred up and down the state of Illinois. You're allowed out of your cell 1 hour once a week. You're allowed one shower once a week, and you get that for 10 minutes. Okay, during that 6 years of being transferred all over the state, I was subjected to all type of brutality by correctional guards. I became involved in litigating. I filed every lawsuit that I got opportunity to file, which none of them I won, but I was even criminally charged with assaulting a guard, took into trial in Sheridan, and I was fortunate that I had one nurse, a nun, on the jury. So I was found not guilty of that, which they call me hollering at somebody, spitting in their face. So I was charged with aggravated battery against law enforcement officials because of that. But as a result, I end up going from prison to prison to prison in isolation, subject to being beat anytime. In fact, I almost had my privates pulled off, okay, because I went to one prison and I had a conflict with these guards, and always you transferred to these prisons where these young, creepy-looking crackers, for the most part, because most of the prisons in the southern state are part of the state, and they're not familiar with dealing with people like us, because a lot of these prisons, they just got these jobs that their uncle or somebody had, and it would result, we already chained up. They would make certain cracks, mess with your food, anything to make you go off. So I ended up going through that for quite a long time. And fortunately,
how long did you serve?
I did 26 years in prison.
How'd you get out?
I was paroled, and my parole is not actually up until year 2027 or something, but I was released off parole in year 2006. But just the fact that the conspiracy to give us all felonies, to prevent us from defending ourselves, okay? I live in a neighborhood now where white people walking around with guns. They just moved in the neighborhood. They got guns. I know they got guns. I've seen these guns. Pushing their baby carriage, walking their dogs through the alleys, okay? I can be confronted through one night, you know what I'm saying? And I don't have a right to defend myself because I'm a convicted felon. So therefore, I don't have a right to have a firearm, which is considered the law of the land now, since Illinois has that law. So basically.
I'm going to ask you this question so you can answer this question. I know the answer. Did you have any kind of rehabilitation after 26 years in prison?
I had, listen.
When you came out, they had a counseling program.
They didn't even give me, I think, $25? And I ain't heard nothing else from the Illinois Department of Corrections other than going reporting to my parole officer. And a few occasions they took me to the parole officer, tried to make me an informant, a stool pigeon, or saying that I had something to do with murders in another state. And if I didn't tell them I was going back to Stateville, but I had this, I still had parole, and my parole went up so forth. I mean, they did all kind of things, still doing stuff.
So they don't do, when they keep somebody in prison for a quarter of a century, they don't do any kind of rehab. You don't need any rehab. Nobody gets
whatsoever.
What kind of agencies? Is Benny still active?
Yes, I was with Benny Lee at a memorial, his home. I left VON. I left VON's Taste of WVON and went to Benny Lee's house, which is about 4 or 5 blocks away. And he, myself, Warden English, Attorney Lou Myers, and various other people from street organizations, we all came together for the memorial services for the Pontiac 17. And
when was that?
This was Saturday.
I didn't even hear about it.
Okay, what do you know about the Pontiac 17?
I was one of the lawyers.
I thought you might want to say, what do you know about that case?
About his
The
case?
Pontiac 17 case.
I knew everything about that case.
let's talk about
That was
human rights denied.
right. That was when 3 prison guards were killed at Joliet, and they wanted to clear out the prisons of all of the gangs, and so they charged 17 heads of gangs and others of their assistants and so forth with the murder, and they made it a capital case with the intent of putting all of these people to death. It was the largest capital case that's ever been. We tried that case for 2 years. It was a year just selecting the jury. And then we were in motions before the actual trial. So it never actually went to trial because of the motions that we had. And it was Leo Holt, Buddy Clark, the names are slipping me right now, but Cassandra Watson and Jackson, Miss Jackson. We tried that case, and we had to give up our own practices because we were got an office at 26 in California because we were there daily, every day. We went through that case. Chokwe Lumumba and Lou Myers
And he's
were
the,
part of it.
he's the mayor here now.
Chokwe Lumumba just became the mayor of Jackson,
Yes.
Mississippi.
Yes.
Really?
The
Yeah,
most
the
beautiful
capital.
thing-
El Haj Malik
That's
Shabazz, the capital. Of the
I was
island.
just in Mississippi, and I was going to go to try to go to see him. We had a family reunion, but it was the same weekend he had luncheon at Detroit. So he left there when I was there, and I couldn't see him. At any rate, we have had occasions where we had celebrations. Oh, well, what happened is we won the case. The state dropped the charges because we excoriated the witnesses. We got them so confused that they had so many lies involved, and they got them all overturned. So the state decided that after 2 years, they knew that they could not prove a case, and they withdrew the charges. And so all those people were found not guilty. Now, the thing is, it was a prison case, so all these people were already in jail serving other time. So they didn't get out of jail as a result of it. Benny Lee was one of the major people there. And Benny Lee has come out and just blossomed.
Oh,
He's become
yes.
a tremendous
Yes.
person.
Went to
Right.
school too.
Yes.
Yes,
Got
that's
his
right.
degrees. and all.
So he is a wonderful person, and he's really working with these persons who were ex-felons,
Right.
and they're out.
He's
And
active.
he's working, and Howard Saffold is working with
Yes.
Howard
ex-felons
Saffold
also.
been active a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
And I wanted to say about this psychiatrist you mentioned. I met with a psychiatrist last Tuesday, and he interviewed me about Nathan Fields, who was on death row,
mhm.
who they beat so badly and was wrongfully convicted. And that was one of the things he asked me because I was one that was going back there visiting him when he was in this cage-like environment. Because I kept telling people my son was in TAMS for 15 years, but they got places in all the penitentiaries that are just like TAMS. So they don't think because they closed TAMS that they can isolate them and brutalize and separate
That's
them.
right. Get away with it.
And I told him, I said, he said, how would you feel about Nathan Fields? Do you think he needs psychiatric help? I said, sure, he needs it. I said, not only do he need it, I need it for what I witnessed. It was not easy for me to go back there, and I didn't have any problem with any of the other coalition members saying, well, I'll go this time. The only reason why I went to visit him, because I saw a need. But every time I left, I was more depressed than I could even share with you, because I had did nothing to change his situation. And I knew that I was helpless. But I wanted to try to inspire him. So I said, he went from looking like a normal person incarcerated to looking like a wild man. You know, I told him he reminded me when he was in that cage-like cell of, what's his name, Tom Hanks, when he was on that island, how he changed from being out there. Well, that's the way Nathan Field had
What do you
changed.
mean a cage-like cell?
Well, I don't know. They took me. It was just like it was all stone, and it was a little window. I could see him in there, and then it was light coming through a little hole in there, but it was dark, and he was in there, isolated.
Like a cave.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. Yeah.
And there's been determinations now that that is cruel and unusual punishment.
Well, even
Yeah,
even at
Tams,
the time
yeah.
when I say I was litigating, there was a case called Davenport versus State of Illinois, where it was determined by not only the defendant but the state's psychologist that isolating one human being from another human being for a prolonged period of time causes comprehensive psychological damage.
That's what
They kept us isolated for years. You hear me? We could have no contact with no other prisoner, no radios, no TVs, and maybe you get a newspaper or a book every now and then, and you get your 1 hour to go out and run in your little circles if that's whatever you did, or for that was torture.
That was by yourself, wasn't it?
I went through that, yeah, because on the circuit you by yourself.
Yeah.
It was.
So my son.
I
said
left
he is.
right before they opened Tams because I'm more than likely I would have ended up there.
Yeah. Well, my son.
In Tams because I just never went through the guilt that a lot of brothers I seen come through prison. They couldn't recognize racism because a lot of them might have committed a crime or was considered a crime and were convicted, so they accepted the treatment that they were being subjected to as a part of their punishment. I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I recognize racism. I recognize that, man, this is not required in the rules and regulations that, I got to listen to you call me niggas and, you know what I'm saying, or boys, or, bend over and spread them whenever you feel like you want to, demean me as a man. They was encouraging influential prisoners. Guys had a lot of time that they was considering hard to deal with. They were bringing them and putting homosexuals in their cells, give you a homosexual and you'll be satisfied, you know what I'm saying, or TV or whatever, you know what I'm saying. The system was designed to destroy you as a person. I mean, your manhood is challenged,
human being.
your dignity, your self-respect, all that is challenged. I'm just grateful.
Dehumanize you.
I'm just grateful to Allah that I was able to have, first of all, that He allowed me to come up out of there alive and healthy. But had I been, I was taken out every day to get Thorazine now. They was giving it to me, okay, for like 2 or 3 months because I refused to fight for it. But trust me that it never entered my system after the first shot. I never allowed it to go in my system for the whole while that they were taking me day and night to the hospital to get my medication, because I didn't want to be going through being shot with the medication. I had another way of dealing with it, and I dealt with it that way, and it didn't go in my system. Had it been in my system, I would be not here talking to you today, not with a sane, conscious mind,
And some of these people who have been incarcerated have been subjected to that. And there's a lot of mental illness that comes out with them. And when they come out having been violated in that way, and no therapy, no support, no counseling available out here, then you have casualties in the community who are, who are somebody's responsibility unless they become homeless people on the street.
Exactly.
Last month, a young man killed his mother. She was in our group down at Precious Blood. I just remember her first name, Virginia. And she was saying that her son was going to come out, and he had been sick for so many years. But they was releasing him, and she didn't have nowhere that would accept him. So she had no choice but to take him in. And he ended up killing his mother. That was last month. She was in our group.
But he was sick. He was
He
mentally.
he was
he was
ill.
mentally ill.
She knew he was ill, and that they had not treated him But his time was up, and they didn't have any place to put him, and she accepted him. But he came and he was demanding more of the medication than she was supposed. She was supposed to be giving it to him,
Mhm.
you know, allotting
Mhm.
out to him, and he killed his mother.
Well, that's called post-traumatic slavery disorder.
Yeah, I guess
That
so.
when you go through traumatic episodes, and especially repeated and sustained and prolonged traumatic episodes, the residual of that stays with you and triggers certain kinds of responses and memories and behavior.
And I think that word nigga is just a part of that mindset, you know. I mean, from all the research and everything and read about and heard about this word, if we got babies growing up hearing that a nigga ain't this or a nigga ain't that, stay away from that nigga, don't hang out with that nigga, but they not being taught. They taught, for one thing, love that man on the cross, okay? And we know who that man on the cross look like, all right? But they been told that a nigga ain't this, don't trust a nigga, and they looking at themselves, you know what I'm saying, in the mirror. That's just my opinion about one of the causes of the self-hate that we are subjected to, because we not taught at children growing up to love ourselves. We taught to hate a nigga, don't trust a nigga, stay away from a nigga. And what I noticed is that on cable TV, all day, every day, they got these movies on where black people using the word nigga, 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 you know. But you don't find no other ethnic group being assaulted or using an assaultive word, you know, unless it's in a comedy or clearly it's some type of comic strip. But
I was driving about a week ago, and there was this dignified looking woman driving the car, and we had to stop at the light, and the windows were down, and she was playing this rap song saying, "A nigga ain't shit."
right.
And I looked
And
at
loud,
her,
they play it loud.
and she was mouthing the words.
Right.
And she looked like she'd be a social worker or something. You know,
Right.
she was not a youngster. She was about 40, 45 years old. And I looked over at her, and she looked at me and just kept going. I was quite surprised. But I did talk to a young college person who was telling me that the use of that word is disturbing to the old people. So you guys, the old people, you know, bother, but with us, it's just saying it's like another person. So we don't have any problem. I said, well, what about if a white person called you? She said, well, a white person shouldn't call us that, but we don't have a problem using it. You know, it's our
And
word.
that was my same scenario when I was talking about brothers being convicted of a crime and it being subjected to racist actions when they thought it was just part of their punishment for being convicted, you know.
It's normal.
It's normal, right.
It's some abnormal, crazy stuff
Right.
being accepted as normal, when there are so many other things we can say to each other, so many
Right.
other names that we can address each other with. You know, we can elevate each other. You know, I noticed that you have chosen a name that is not
That
your
was
quote slave name.
self-determination, yeah. That was to demonstrate my own ability to determine myself. That was
Right,
one
to
of the
define
principles
yourself.
of Kwanzaa, which I was blessed to be in a celebration that gave me my name.
But you see, they consider that a term of endearment when they're talking to each other. I just heard it today. The girls were talking.
Yeah.
And they say, well, we can define our own words, and you can't let
The
them
B
define
word
our words.
is
But
big.
then, what other names do you use? If that's the only name that is a term of endearment, you know, do you ever say darling? Do you
Right.
ever say honey? Do you
Right.
ever say beloved?
Right.
You know, do
They
you
don't
ever
know those
say
words.
anything that anybody else would regard as a term of endearment or a kind word? So the thing is, it's not balanced. You know, I don't particularly care to spend much time on this, but we've got so much imbalance. You know, we insist upon the right to be out of order, you know,
Right.
and we don't notice that, you know, you're going to keep insisting on the right to be out of order. You never have enough balance to be in order and therefore to be anything called normal. So it's you know, here we are talking about the right to life, to liberty, to the pursuit of happiness. the right to information that will enable you to make sound decisions that will improve the quality of your life. You know, who wants to spend time on some buzzwords? You know, who wants to, you have learned, if you didn't know it before you were 15, you have learned that your time on this planet is precious time.
Yes.
And that what you do with this life, and you say, I don't know how many more days I got to do this, what you do with this life is important. What you say with this mouth is important. Everything that you are doing, if you regard yourself in any way as worthy of being alive, what you do with your life matters.
And what we're doing is responding to what the mainstream is placing before us. So very few of us who don't have education or even life's experience are going out doing to create anything. And the concept of the common good has been lost. So we do for me. And we don't help our brother because I talk about the common good. They say, what is that? You know, your neighborhood. And that's another whole story, how they've taken away our neighborhoods from us. But the idea that you should be helping another person, they say, well, man, I can't even help myself. I said, well, that is the issue. Why don't you help yourself?
Well, you know, that's the whole idea, is if there is a neighborhood, a brotherhood, or a common good, then you don't have to worry so much about helping yourself because there's somebody over there that's helping you. You helping somebody and somebody is helping you. You know, it's not you are the only one who is doing good, but good is being done to you. So you can afford it if that's the kind of value system that you operate by. But many times people don't understand that your blessings really come from what you do for other people. It's very hard to bless yourself. You know, not to the extent. I mean, you can bless yourself with a bag of Jay's potato chips and a strawberry pop, but I'm talking about the huge things that cause people to show up in your life to help you at times that you need help and don't know where the help is coming from. This happens to you if you are that kind of person. If you're the kind of person that will give, you will also be the kind of person that will be on the receiving end of many things that you didn't really earn and you don't really know where they came from.
As a result, our human rights are being taken from us as a people and as an individual. His human rights were taken from him. He had the right to be a free human being and to have all of the obligations and all of the other things that came about as being a human being and the privileges. What has happened to us is we get the penalties but not the rewards. So that this program is like civil rights and human rights. Civil rights are those rights that are designed by the legal government.
They're man-made.
Man-made, and so they establish the Constitution, and though in conforming to the Constitution, those are your civil rights. But your human rights are not
inalienable.
Confined.
They come from outside.
Right, not
man.
confined to any particular place. They're global, which means they're so basic that as being a human, you have that right to live with dignity. The problem with our police department right now is that they do not respect us, and they want to take our dignity from us. And everything they do is guided toward being disrespectful.
And
So-
the language,
language-
police language is so, I mean,
Yes.
they done pulled up, you don't get your so-and-so out the street, I'm gonna take
And they
your
don't care
car.
who's around.
Young white police, you know, and they talk real crazy, and I have to check myself because I have a tendency not to want to hear it sometimes, you know.
Well, I've been around young black ones, and they don't respect me.
Yeah.
They just talk anyway. And the sad part, they just killing our people just every day. Every time you turn around, some young man is running, and they turn around
And
to shoot the police, and they shoot them in the back.
Right.
You know, that's ridiculous.
And Monique Davis made a statement about what her constituents have been telling her
Right.
about police being involved in some of these killings. Now,
Right.
I
mean,
believe they're involved in a
here's
lot of them.
my opinion is this, that you got shootings happening at late at night where nobody know who the shooter was. But a lot of these shots are head shots or, you know,
The
target
funny
shots.
thing is they never
Sharpshooters.
miss.
Right.
You know, somebody, if I had a gun and I fired it, I probably wouldn't hit nothing I was aiming at.
Mhm.
So, you know, we got so many, not so many guns in the community, but we got so many sharp shooters.
Exactly.
All of a
You know
sudden,
that
though.
they can kill people. Folks are not seldom just injured. You know, you hear somebody was shot in the leg
Right.
and they're in the hospital, shot in the arm, they're in the no, they're dead.
This
But
is to
now they are.
proliferate the violence in our community, the so-called black-on-black crime, because some other person is going to be blamed for it. They don't know who he is, but they know he's from another gang, so they're going to choose that gang, and there's possibly some retaliation, you know, and then that creates and furthers the, you know, the conflict. So a lot of that is being done, in my opinion, again, is because of the gentrification that's being done.
And because of the anonymity, we don't know each other.
Exactly.
You don't know
they
who
all
lives next door. You
unsolved
don't know who
crimes.
lives upstairs.
70% of unsolved murders in our community.
And we have to take
More
the
than that.
baggage for it. It's unsolved, so blacks did it.
But
Not
also, though,
necessarily.
some of their shooting is not perfect because they're shooting little kids. They didn't intend to shoot these kids.
I don't
I'm
know.
I'm not altogether certain that that's not part of the
yeah,
whole thing.
I'm not. I
Right.
mean,
You know,
because
They
because-
don't
they're
care a
young.
damn thing about our
Because
children.
you will, if you are outraged by the violence, you will surrender civil liberties. You know, you say, okay, they should have cameras. Okay, they should, you know, they should take all these extreme measures, although the cameras don't ever seem to catch people,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But the point is, when people feel like, you know, when they become outraged because here's a baby who was killed, here's, you know, here are all these innocent people losing their lives because the so-called street organizations are at war with each other, then people say, okay, I don't care what you do. You know, put speed bumps, put cameras, put more walking police, do everything. You know, turn this into a fort.
But I'm saying the shooter isn't always right because they don't intend to shoot these kids.
And
You're
I'm
talking about
saying
what
we don't
happened.
always know who the
We
shooter
don't. We
is.
don't know that they are trying to shoot these kids
Exactly.
because they kill them younger and younger.
That's right.
And